The fatal mistake that doomed everyone on this bus. The bus rocked as it crossed the uneven road, the engine rumbling against the silence of the savannah. The passengers, a group of volunteers who had spent a year helping a small, isolated village, were relaxed, relieved to be going home. Amid laughter and animated conversation, no one seemed worried, except the driver. The old driver, known only as Baba Jango, kept his hands firmly on the wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. His jaw was clenched and beads of sweat dripped down his forehead, despite the cool night wind coming through the ajar windows. The problem wasn't just the bumpy road. It was something else. At the back of the bus, Moses was smiling in the corner of his mouth, fiddling with something in his backpack. He felt the comforting weight of the object he had picked up in the village before his departure, a small carved wooden idol, covered in ancient carvings and symbols he couldn't understand. It had been found in the sacred shrine of the elders. He couldn't resist the temptation to take it as a souvenir. He didn't believe in legends. Superstition, he muttered to himself, running his fingers over the idol. But at that moment, the bus engine choked. The smiles and laughter of the passengers dissolved as the vehicle began to lose speed. Baba Jango cursed in his native language and pressed down on the accelerator, but the engine coughed and died completely. The bus slid slowly to a stop in the middle of the dusty road. Silence fell over everyone. "Hey, Baba, what happened?" asked Layla, one of the volunteers, leaning over to see the front of the vehicle. The driver didn't answer immediately. He closed his eyes for a moment and muttered something in his own language. Then he turned to the passengers with a pale face. "We shouldn't be here." That's when the shadows began to move among the trees. Slender, indistinct shapes danced between the twisted trunks. They moved erratically but steadily, approaching the bus as if attracted by something. The air became heavy, and a smell of wet earth mixed with something rotten invaded the vehicle. Then came the first scream. One of the volunteers pointed to the window, her eyes wide with horror. Outside, a figure stood out among the shadows, a tall, scrawny man, his skin cracked as if it had been dried out by the sun. His eyes were two empty, black slits, and his mouth opened in a crooked smile as he walked slowly towards the bus. Baba Jango gripped the steering wheel, muttering between his teeth, "He's come for what's his." Moses felt a shiver run down his spine. His hand trembled as he held the idol. He had made a mistake, and now everyone would pay for it. The skeletal creature stopped at the entrance to the bus, its shadow stretching across the floor. The passengers held their breath as the lights flickered and Clara disappeared without a sound. Moses felt a shiver run up his spine. His gaze fell on his backpack, where the wooden idol seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Baba Jango, the driver, pointed a trembling finger at him. "It was you," he whispered. Before Moses could reply, the bus door opened by itself. Outside, Clara's silhouette appeared on the dusty road. But something was wrong. Her body moved as if pulled by invisible wires. "Moses!" Her voice came out weak, but loaded with something ancient. And then the skeletal being smiled. The air inside the bus became heavy. The whispering voice resonated inside Moses' mind. "Give back what belongs to us." Baba Jango grabbed his arm. "Throw it away now." Moses hesitated, and Clara took a shaky step towards the bus. Her eyes were empty. The idol burned in his hands. With a scream, he threw it to the ground. A supernatural howl ripped through the air. The shadows contorted, and the creature crumbled into dust, sucked into the idol, which cracked and exploded. Clara fell unconscious. Silence reigned, but Moses knew at that moment that something still wasn't right. Moses felt the weight of everyone's gaze on him. The air inside the bus seemed thicker, as if something invisible was pressing down on his lungs. Clara was still standing outside, her trembling finger pointing at him. But those were no longer her eyes. There was something inside her, something that used her body, like a puppet. The skeletal creature inside the bus took another step. "Give back what belongs to us." The whisper echoed again in Moses' mind. His fingers squeezed the idol inside the backpack. The heat rose, burning his skin. He had to get rid of it. Baba Jango, still next to him, couldn't take his eyes off the object. "You have to give it back now," her voice was urgent. But Moses hesitated. What if it wasn't enough? What if, even if they gave it back, the entities wouldn't let them go? That's when Clara took the first step towards the bus. Her body moved erratically, as if it were being pulled by invisible hooks. The other passengers began to cry, some praying quietly. Layla pulled Moses by the arm. "For God's sake, Moses, do something." His heart was beating so hard that he could hear his own blood pulsing in his ears. Then, on impulse, Moses grabbed the idol with both hands and ran out of the bus. The wind cut his face as his feet touched the dusty ground. He took a few steps forward, his heart in his throat. The creature didn't move. It just watched. Clara stopped. Moses' breathing was rapid. With trembling hands, he lifted the idol and, in a single movement, threw it into the middle of the road. Time seemed to freeze. As soon as the object touched the ground, the shadows contorted violently, as if a black maelstrom had formed. A horrible howl filled the air, and Moses had to cover his ears. The skeletal creature let out a shrill scream, and its body began to dissolve into dust before everyone's eyes. Clara fell to the ground. The shadows were sucked into the idol, which began to crack until it exploded into pieces of dark wood. Silence fell over the road. Moses was shaking from head to toe. His eyes turned to Clara, who was still slumped over. Layla and Baba Jango ran over to her. For a moment, no one dared to breathe. Then Clara opened her eyes. "What happened?" she whispered, confused. The passengers began to leave the bus, dazed, hugging each other. The worst was over, or so they thought. Still trying to understand what had happened, Moses moved away from the group. His thoughts were confused. The idol had been destroyed. So why did he still feel something wrong? That's when Baba Jango put his hand on his shoulder and said, "Do you think it's over?" Moses frowned. "What?" Baba Jango looked at the floor, where the pieces of the idol were still scattered. And then Moses saw it. Among the fragments of broken wood, there was something else. A small mark carved into the ground. A symbol. And then, like a blast of icy wind, Moses heard a whisper inside his mind. "We're still here." His eyes widened, and then the bus lights flickered on again. The volunteers finally managed to restart the bus. Clara was weak, but alive. They would return to the city, trying to forget that night. But Moses, he knew something wasn't right. That night, as he tried to sleep in the hotel where they were staying, he felt an abnormal chill run down his spine. The clock struck 3:33 in the morning when he heard it. A sound. Tum, tum, tum. Slow beats echoing through the darkness. He turned slowly in bed, his heart hammering. And then he saw the shadow on the wall. Tall, skeletal, smiling. The same whisper came from somewhere inside the room. "Not everyone who travels comes home." The end.